Today's heartbreaking case takes place in Mitaka City, Tokyo, Japan. The victim was a young girl named Saya Suzuki, born in 1995. With her beautiful face and lovable personality, Saya was cherished by everyone around her. She was fortunate to be born and raised in an artistic family, home to screenwriters, directors, and artists. Even Saya's mother had held her own art exhibitions. In this warm and close-knit family atmosphere, Saya was always surrounded by love. At age 10, while in 5th grade, Saya's talent was discovered by an entertainment company, and she was invited to act in a horror film. This marked the beginning of her artistic journey. With her pure, adorable face, Saya quickly won over audiences through multiple television appearances. Seeing her potential, a major talent management agency recruited her with plans for comprehensive training. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, with a bright future ahead of her. However, a sudden incident would completely destroy her promising life. On Friday, October 4th, 2013, while everyone else was looking forward to the weekend, 18-year-old Saya was consumed by anxiety. Her heart raced when she received a message from her ex-boyfriend, Charles Thomas Ikunaga. He wanted to see her one last time. Ikunaga, 21, was 3 years older than Saya. Their story began 2 years earlier when they met on Facebook and started a long-distance relationship. However, the romance only lasted a year before breaking up. But just 6 months later, in the spring of that year, Ikunaga became obsessive and constantly demanded they get back together. He continuously sent harassing messages to Saya, a situation that persisted until October. Every time Saya recalled her dating period with Ikunaga, memories of unhappiness would flood back like a tidal wave, strengthening her resolve to reject any reconciliation attempts. However, her firm stance only made Ikunaga more extreme. He began sending threatening emails saying he would kill her, leaving her terrified and anxious. The situation became even more concerning that day when Saya was shocked to discover Ikunaga, who was supposed to be in another city, secretly following her on her way to school. Her fear intensified when she read his message, stating he would come find her at school. In complete panic, Saya immediately sought help from her teachers. Upon learning of the situation, the school quickly contacted the nearby Yamadakai police station. However, the police stated that this case fell under the jurisdiction of Mitaka Police Station, which oversees Saya's residential area, and requested the case be transferred there. 4 days later, on the morning of October 8th, Saya specifically took a day off school to go with her parents to file a report at Mitaka Police Station. There, she detailed everything she had experienced recently and her ongoing anxiety. After listening and understanding the situation, the police tried calling Ikunaga 3 times, but all calls went unanswered. After completing the police report, the tense atmosphere in the Suzuki family eased somewhat. They placed their trust in the authorities to handle the situation appropriately. With this mindset, each family member returned to their daily routines. Saya's parents rushed to their companies for work, while Saya returned to school. When the school bell rang, signaling the end of the day, Saya left school with a heavy heart. She felt conflicted between trust in police protection and vague fears about the unknown future. At 4:51 p.m. when she reached home, the first thing she did was call the police station to report her safe arrival. Hearing that she was home safely, the officer on the other end of the line breathed a sigh of relief. However, just 4 minutes later, at 4:55 p.m., the police station suddenly received an emergency call. Saya had been attacked and was lying motionless in a pool of blood, her life in critical danger. Without a moment's delay, police forces were immediately dispatched to the scene. The incident occurred in a peaceful residential area in the Inokashira district of Mitaka City, lined with detached houses. There, 18-year-old Saya lay motionless on the street in an extremely critical condition. She was immediately rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. While medical staff focused on saving Saya, police quickly cordoned off the crime scene for investigation. Through examining the blood patterns at the scene, they reconstructed the sequence of events. Saya had been attacked right on the steps in front of her house. In desperation, she had tried to run toward the main road for help, but tragically, her attacker showed no mercy and continued stabbing her as she fled. After committing the act, the perpetrator quickly fled the scene, leaving behind no weapons. Police rapidly launched a manhunt operation, using Saya's house as the center point, spreading out in all 4 directions and setting up checkpoints at key traffic intersections. Meanwhile, at the hospital, despite the medical team's best efforts to save her, Saya's injuries were too severe, and she passed away, leaving behind a world of grief. The forensic report later revealed a heartbreaking truth. Saya had sustained a total of 11 cuts and stab wounds to her neck and abdomen. Most critically, her carotid artery had been completely severed, leading to death from excessive blood loss. During the police's urgent investigation, the person who reported the crime was identified as a 52-year-old woman living near Saya's home. With a trembling voice, the neighbor recounted that horrifying moment. On that fateful afternoon, she suddenly heard desperate screams for help echoing from the street. When she ran out to look, she recognized Saya, still in her familiar school uniform. She rushed to the girl's side only to witness a heartbreaking scene. Saya lying motionless in a pool of blood, her face as white as paper, eyes wide open in desperation. At that moment, Saya seemed to try to get up, but the neighbor, worried about causing more serious injuries, told her not to move. The neighbor then rushed home to get a wool blanket, carefully draping it over Saya's body, trying to provide some warmth and comfort. Meanwhile, another neighbor who came to help pointed in a direction and shouted, "That man!" In the direction indicated, there was a man wearing a purple headband and dark clothing, holding a small knife, quickly leaving the scene. He was clearly the perpetrator. The neighbor instinctively wanted to chase after him, but was stopped by others around, concerned that such an impulsive action could be dangerous. Throughout her statement to the police, the neighbor continuously wiped away tears while talking about the Suzuki family. She described them as an extremely close-knit, loving family. She had witnessed Saya's growth from an innocent little girl into a beautiful young woman. With a choked voice, she stated that she had never seen the perpetrator before and felt extremely shocked and disturbed by this sudden tragedy that befell the family. More disturbingly, immediately after the incident, someone quickly claimed responsibility online for the crime. This person was none other than Ikanaga, Saya's ex-boyfriend. Not only did he post Saya's private photos online, but he also included a chilling message. "The victim wasn't chosen randomly, there was bad blood between us." This cold declaration further revealed the cruel nature of the crime. An hour and a half after the incident, at 6:30 p.m., police discovered a suspicious individual in a residential area about half a mile west of the Suzuki residence. The man was barefoot with bloodstains on his pants. It was Ikanaga. Police officers were immediately dispatched to the scene, surrounding and apprehending him. Notably, Ikanaga offered no resistance during his arrest. Through investigation, police learned that Ikanaga Charles Thomas was of Japanese-Filipino descent, with a Japanese father and Filipino mother. He was born in 1992 in Manila, Philippines, and was brought to Kyoto, Japan in 1993 when he was just learning to walk. Though the move to Japan should have meant a better life, fate seemed to have other plans for this mixed-race child. Instead of improving, Ikanaga's life increasingly descended into darkness. The family atmosphere was always tense, with frequent arguments and violence between his parents. Mother and son were forced to live cramped in a small room. The tragedy worsened when his parents divorced when he was 4 years old. After the divorce, his mother seemed to grow increasingly distant from her son, often leaving him alone at home for days. To survive, the young boy had to beg for food at nearby convenience stores. As time passed, Ikanaga grew into a tall young man, standing 5 feet 11 inches with a solid build. His close friends often compared him to a character who had stepped out of the manga world. He exuded a strange charisma that seemed beyond reality. From his personality and interests to his behavior, everything reminded people of anime characters, a distinctive trait that attracted much attention. After leaving school, Ikanaga began supporting himself through part-time work in Kyoto. In 2011, at age 19, fate led him to meet Saya through Facebook. The young girl's pure beauty and cheerful personality quickly captured Ikanaga's heart. Despite the geographical distance, they maintained an online relationship. Ikanaga frequently traveled to Mitaka to meet Saya, and during these visits, he secretly observed and learned her home address. However, psychological wounds from his childhood left Ikanaga with deep-seated insecurities. As a truck driver with modest income, he always felt unworthy of Saya. To hide his insecurities, Ikanaga created a completely different persona. An excellent student at a prestigious private university, fluent in English, with numerous academic achievements. In her youthful innocence, Saya completely believed these lies. As time passed, cracks began to appear in their relationship. Ikanaga's involvement with another girl while dating Saya dealt a heavy blow to their relationship. Upon discovering this, Saya firmly decided to end the relationship and made plans to study abroad in 2012. Ikanaga refused to accept this outcome and threatened to release Saya's private photos if she insisted on breaking up. Despite these threats, Saya remained resolute in her decision to leave. What she couldn't have known was that a seed of hatred had begun to take root in Ikanaga's heart. In spring 2013, news of Saya's return to Japan after completing her studies abroad once again stirred Ikanaga's unstable emotions. Thoughts of rekindling their relationship increasingly consumed him. However, Saya responded to his efforts with only coldness and indifference. With each rejection, Ikanaga's disappointment and hurt intensified. When he finally realized his dream of reconciliation was completely shattered, his desperation drove him to extreme, dangerous thoughts. With a dark plan forming in his mind, Ikanaga began preparing systematically. He focused on building his physical strength, spending extensive time at the gym with high-intensity workouts to improve his physical condition. Alongside this, he wrote motivational notes in his phone as a way to reinforce his determination and courage. Actions that clearly showed his intentions had been carefully planned in advance. By March 2013, Ikanaga quietly arrived in Mitaka, secretly following Saya and hiding near her house, covertly observing the daily routines of everyone in the Suzuki family. After confirming that Saya was alone at home, he took advantage of the opportunity to break in, putting on gloves before assaulting a terrified Saya. Saya cried and begged for mercy. Ikanaga then issued a condition: she must maintain daily contact with him. Faced with this threat, Saya could only agree. Fearing the release of her private photos, she didn't report to the police, thinking she could temporarily appease him. In the following days, Ikanaga noticed that Saya had indeed started responding to his messages, which gave him some peace of mind. He returned to Kyoto to continue his work. What he didn't expect was that 3 months later, in June, Saya suddenly blocked him and ceased all communication. This made him feel angry and powerless. He wanted to take action again, but a sudden increase in his workload at the company prevented him from leaving. So he decided to carry out his previous threat. He registered an account on an adult website to prepare for his upcoming actions. By September, when work was no longer busy, Ikanaga again planned to return to Mitaka. Before executing his plan, Ikanaga invited his closest friend for drinks, seemingly seeking final consolation for his tormented soul. With emotion in his voice, he told his friend about plans to live in America for 4 to 5 years, saying they would rarely have chances to meet afterward. His voice was full of nostalgia. Ikanaga also mentioned wanting to say a final goodbye to his ex-girlfriend. His friend, unaware of the dark intentions behind these confessions, could only nod in sympathy and understanding. The drinking continued through the night until the first rays of dawn appeared, when Ikanaga finally stood up to say goodbye. This moment marked his point of no return. On September 28th, while passing through Musashino City, Ikanaga stopped at a local convenience store and purchased a 5-inch knife, the tool for his heinous plan. From October 2nd, Ikanaga began posting a large number of Saya's private photos on his created account, accompanied by hateful messages. Since Saya had appeared in several TV dramas and had a certain level of fame, these photos quickly spread across the internet and caused a sensation. Ikunaga posted a total of 67 photos, most of which were taken by Saya herself, originally shared in trust between lovers, never imagining they would one day become public. Ikunaga's actions didn't stop there. Anticipating that the Suzuki family would be more vigilant after the previous incident, he booked a room at a hotel near Saya's house to better observe the family's daily routines and find ways to avoid security cameras. To his delight, he found that the Suzuki family's routines hadn't changed. On the afternoon of October 8th, Ikunaga seized his opportunity. He climbed to the second floor of the house adjacent to Saya's home and through an unlocked window, successfully broke into the Suzuki residence. He quietly hid in a first-floor closet, patiently waiting for Saya to return from school. During his hiding time, Ikunaga wasn't idle. He continuously used his phone to communicate with the outside world. He had his friend call the Suzuki house to confirm if anyone was home. After confirming the house was empty, he sent numerous conflicting and anxious messages to his friend. "I can't decide. I didn't originally plan this, but somehow I ended up in the closet. Want to get out but can't. Want to get home safely. It's over." From 1:27 p.m. to 2:30 p.m., Ikunaga sent a total of 56 messages, each revealing his deep inner conflict and anxiety. Initially, his friend didn't take these words seriously, but as the messages kept coming, he gradually sensed the gravity of the situation. He tried using a gentle tone to dissuade Ikunaga, hoping he might change his mind. However, this didn't shake Ikunaga's determination. He seemed to have become deeply entrenched in the scenario he had constructed and couldn't escape. At 4:51 p.m., Saya returned home from school. Her mood was somewhat lighter after filing the police report with her parents at Mitaka police station that morning. In that moment of lowered guard, just as she reached her front door and was calling the police to report her safe arrival, tragedy struck. Ikunaga suddenly burst out of the closet like a wild animal, targeting Saya's neck and stomach in a frenzied attack. In absolute panic, Saya tried to escape. The sound of chaotic footsteps, gasping breaths, and desperate screams echoed through the quiet street. But as her strength failed, she collapsed onto the street outside her home. Yet, as if unsatisfied with his rage, Ikunaga didn't stop, continuing to plunge the knife ruthlessly into the young girl's fragile body. After completing his savage act, he hurriedly fled the scene, leaving behind a young life slowly fading in a pool of blood. While Ikunaga was fleeing, his friend contacted him to ask about what happened. Without any remorse, he coldly admitted to his actions. "I was too rushed to hear her voice clearly. When I bumped into her, she screamed and ran outside. I immediately chased after her and acted on impulse." Faced with this frightening confession, his friend quickly urged him to turn himself in, but Ikunaga simply remained silent and hung up. Shockingly, instead of showing any remorse, Ikunaga informed his mother about his brutal actions and even posted about it online as if boasting about an achievement. These actions revealed a twisted psychology, as if he was seeking social validation for his savage behavior. Afterward, Ikunaga wandered aimlessly through the streets until he was finally discovered and apprehended by police. 3 days after the incident, police found the murder weapon about a third of a mile from the crime scene. Additionally, they discovered one of Ikunaga's shoes on the second-floor balcony of the house next to Saya's, proving he had illegally broken into the Suzuki residence. 1 year later, in July 2014, the case was brought to trial at the Tachikawa branch of the Tokyo District Court. The defendant, Charles Thomas Ikunaga, was charged with murder, breaking and entering, and other crimes. Ikunaga appeared in court wearing a black sports shirt. His eyes nervously scanned the room, and he licked his lips, showing signs of tension. During the prosecutor's opening statement, he stared intently at the prosecutor, blinking continuously. The prosecutor argued that the defendant, Ikunaga, had consistently lied to and betrayed Saya during their relationship. When she proposed breaking up, he not only refused to accept it, but also continued to harass her, escalating to assault and publishing her private photos, and finally planning her murder. These actions clearly demonstrated a lack of humanity. Faced with the police accusations, Ikunaga sat in the defendant's chair emotionless, as if these words had nothing to do with him. However, when his defense lawyer mentioned his childhood abuse by his parents, his body slightly trembled. He lowered his head, and his face became rigid, suggesting this part of his past had touched a deep wound in his soul. Saya's father testified as a witness. He recalled that on the morning of the incident, his daughter had anxiously asked him what would happen if something bad happened to her. He had firmly replied that he would stop at nothing to avenge her. His daughter's words now seemed prophetic, leaving them feeling both heartbroken and angry. Their daughter had been their hope and reason for living. Now they would likely be plunged into darkness. When asked about his thoughts during the crime, Ikunaga said he felt confused and wasn't even sure if he really wanted to harm Saya. He claimed he could understand the victim's family's pain, but couldn't sympathize with them. He showed no remorse for his actions and offered no apology. When the judge further questioned him about why he released the private photos, Ikunaga declared that he did it only to show off his intimate relationship with Saya, wanting to preserve evidence of their love and to hurt Saya's self-esteem through this method. After 10 days of trial, the case reached its verdict. The judge found that defendant Charles Thomas Ikunaga's actions were extremely selfish and showed no remorse, therefore deserving no leniency. The court sentenced Ikunaga to 22 years in prison for multiple charges. The judge explained that this sentence took into account the defendant's young age and potential for rehabilitation. Regarding this sentence, Saya's parents expressed extreme disappointment and dissatisfaction. They felt the sentence did not adequately consider the severity of the crime and the pain the perpetrator had caused their family. Meanwhile, Ikunaga's defense lawyers argued that the sentence was too harsh, claiming the court hadn't fully considered the defendant's traumatic childhood experiences, including domestic violence, neglect, and other impacts. The defense lawyers suggested that 15 years would have been a more appropriate sentence. As both sides disagreed with the verdict, each filed appeals. When the incident occurred, beyond questioning the sentencing, the public was outraged by Ikunaga's act of distributing Saya's private photos, considering this itself a criminal act. Japanese citizens began paying attention to this issue and called for legislation to protect citizens' privacy rights from violation. Under the influence of this case, in November 2014, Japan enacted related legislation. The law covered not only private acts, but also made it illegal to distribute any photos without consent if they could be sexually provocative, even if the subject was clothed. Violators could face up to 3 years in prison or a fine of 500,000 yen, approximately $5,000. 2 years after the incident, on August 7, 2015, prosecutors filed another lawsuit against Ikunaga. On March 16, 2016, the case was tried at the Tachikawa branch. This time, Ikunaga appeared in court wearing a black suit and white shirt. He took long strides to the defendant's seat and sat motionless, appearing deep in thought. In court, the defense lawyers strongly objected. They argued that the prosecutor's filing of another lawsuit after an existing verdict constituted an abuse of prosecutorial power. The defense lawyers also pointed out that the victim had shown carelessness in this matter by voluntarily sending private photos, suggesting that these incidents shouldn't be blamed entirely on the defendant and that the victim should bear some responsibility. Finally, the court delivered its verdict. While Ikunaga was found guilty of multiple charges, the judge found no error in the previous sentencing decision and maintained the 22-year prison term. 4 years after the incident, in January 2017, the Tokyo High Court upheld the previous ruling, finding no inadequacy in the result. When the news was announced, many people who had followed Saya's case felt indignant about the outcome. Moreover, the police's handling of the case was also criticized. Before the incident, Saya had reported to the police twice, yet this failed to prevent the tragedy. People couldn't help but question whether the police had truly fulfilled their responsibility to protect citizens. Faced with these questions, the relevant authorities chose to evade, saying it was difficult to answer. When reporters visited Ikunaga in prison for an interview and asked if he had ever loved Saya, he answered firmly and directly, "No." He explained that Saya was a source of suffering for him, and only by ending her life could he end his own suffering. If given the chance to do it over, he said he would make the same choice. After this incident, Japan amended its laws regarding stalking behavior. Beyond increasing patrols around stalking victims' residences, they also required surveillance and investigation of suspects' residences. The Saya Suzuki case left many lingering questions and painful lessons for Japanese society. A bright life was eternally extinguished at age 18 when she was still full of dreams and aspirations. Beyond being one family's tragedy, this case reflected troubling issues in modern society: dating violence, online harassment, and the ineffectiveness in protecting potential victims. Today, Saya's case serves as a permanent scar in the memories of those left behind, a painful reminder of the price paid for complacency and insufficient vigilance. However, it has also become a driving force for society to continuously improve its mechanisms for protecting young people like Saya so they can safely flourish in the sunshine of youth and future promise. And that's the case for today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss out on other exciting cases. Thank you for watching and see you in the next videos.